Good evening, this is Chair Brian Haggerty with the El Paso Community College. I want to welcome you all to our monthly meeting. To contact us to join this meeting, you can call a toll-free number, 1-844-621-3956, enter access code 120-577-2038, and please enter the number to access the call. And through an audio feed found at youtube.com/goepcc. Pam, go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Uxer.
Present.
Ms. Sanchez.
Here.
Mrs. Robles.
Present.
Dr. Graham.
Present.
Ms. Naheda.
Present.
Ms. Pena.
Present.
Mr. Haggerty.
Present. 1.4.
Item 1.4, approval of minutes, July 29th, 2020, regular, August 25th, 2020, special, August 25th, 2020, regular.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Call the question.
Mr. Uxer.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Ms. Naheda.
Aye.
Ms. Pena.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye. Again, I want to welcome everyone, guests and staff members. 1.6, open forum.
We have none.
Okay. 1.7.
Item 1.7, presentations by individuals, groups, and organizations. Item 1.7.1, Dr. Serrata will recognize individuals who've retired from the district. We did not receive bios for the retirees for this month, so we will obtain those and recognize those individuals at the next board meeting. Item 1.7.2, optional written report submitted by the presidents of the Classified Staff Association, the Professional Staff Association, Faculty Association, and the Student Government Association will be read at this time. I've received one report from the Faculty Association submitted by Mr. Rudy Hernandez, the president. Good evening, members of the board. Today's address to the board will be relatively short and to the point. I am pleased to report that the semester is off to a good start. Classes have begun, and in most cases, the first exam of the semester has already been administered. Additionally, most faculty and students have adjusted to online teaching and learning, though adjustments continue to be made for the betterment of everyone. I think that I can safely say that we would all like to get back to face-to-face teaching and learning, but we understand that the current situation may not be conducive to such a situation at this time. I think we have all seen the news about colleges and universities that have seen an increase in reported cases of the virus, and no one would like to see that in our community. At the discretion of the board, when the necessary benchmarks have been met, or at least are favorable, we will all be glad to return to the classroom, very glad. In the meantime, classes are progressing, training continues throughout the college, and everyone is doing their best under the circumstances. Faculty continue to answer student questions and attending to student needs online and virtually. Most importantly, students are learning and are continuing with their collegiate careers.
Is it? Okay, 1.8.
Communications, I have none. Item 1.9, Board of Trustees business. Item 1.9.1, discussion and action regarding the delivery method of instruction for the spring 2021 semester.
Mr. Ratcliffe, would you want to address the board?
I do, Chair Haggerty and members of the board. It is good to hear everyone's voice, and my thoughts and prayers are with everyone. Hope everyone is safe and their families as well. This evening I have 3 different presentations that I will be going over with the board. The first is the spring 2021 options for instructional operations. I know that it feels like, and for the staff as well, that we just finished the enrollment period for the fall term, and actually we haven't finished. We're still enrolling students for mini-semester 2 during the fall term, but we will start enrollment for the spring beginning in early October. And as a result, I need to bring to the board recommendations from the staff and I on how we proceed with the spring term. Our objectives do not change. We want to make sure that we're protecting the health and safety of the college faculty, staff, and students. We want to continue classes in all support service areas for current and future students at physical locations as well as remotely. We want to be prepared to conduct all courses and operations using one of the following methods. A return to on-site classes, and I know the board and I and the community, quite frankly, is all wanting to do that once it is safe and secure. Students return to classes via a hybrid model. And then finally, students return to classes via majority online model. The Safe Campus Task Force, their work continues. They continue to do an inordinate amount of work, both on our planning as well as training, and finally on physical structures within the buildings proper, whether that be plexiglass, whether that be taping at 6 feet increments, signage for PPE, social distancing, getting all of our offices up and ready to ensure that once we are ready to open to the mass public, and I mind it and keep in mind, please, that we never closed. We just transitioned our services, and many of our staff have been here on a continuous basis, have been on campuses and at the centers on a continuous basis. Some of the work that they've done, they have controlled access and egress points for entering buildings. Again, they have social distancing has been ensured, and that they continue to look at 6-foot distancing, no more than a 10-person capacity. We have a mandatory use of face masks and face coverings. We have protocols that have been established for cleaning and disinfecting should there be an incident or in a case. And there are also exposure reporting protocols. Again, all of our team is working closely together. You see that purchasing and physical plan, as well as property control on securing and distributing all of those respective PPE areas, whether it be face coverings, masks, gloves, thermometers, et cetera. We contract our custodial services with Olympus, and they have been trained on what needs to occur, and they've done a great job on each of our respective campuses, as well as the administrative services centers. They work with each of the deans and the program directors and coordinators to schedule and create that organized return. It's not as quick as saying the board indicates we're ready to return, and then the next day we do it. We have a lot of preparation that we're working on in between, and when we bring recommendations to the board for them to do that. Again, it is an ongoing process to schedule these. The spring term is not a mirror image of the fall term. Obviously, courses and schedules change, and the labs and classrooms, we just had a facilities and finance meeting updating the board of where we are on that particular progress. All of those go into the mix of how we schedule these particular areas. Again, I indicated the training for employees and students before an on-site return, as well as clients that may be on our campuses and centers. All of that continues to move forward.
Is it not working?
Sorry, I'm having a slight technical problem. Here we go, is my next. Oops.
Wrong.
There we go.
That's the wrong presentation.
Yeah. Let me get my slides up, board members. Apologies on my technical proficiency or lack thereof. Yeah. So as we go forward, I'm all set. Thank you to everyone and everyone's assistance. We have a return to normal, so to speak, of a student's return to classes on site en masse. That would be for us, for instance, this current fall, right about 26,000 plus students. In the spring of last spring, it was nearly 27,000 students. You have heard, and Mr. Hernandez's statement to the board on behalf of faculty. This is one of the concerns that we continue to have. The team, the cabinet members, several folks across the institution, and I continue to read as much as we can that comes out, whether it be inside higher ed, whether it be on any of the news outlets, and headlines like colleges knew that things wouldn't go well and they reopened anyway. And those are the concerns that I have. Again, the safety and security of our faculty, staff, and students is paramount to the board. You have continued to carry that message forward to me and to the team, and we continue to operate in that fashion. The second is, again, a hybrid model. We've talked about a hybrid model. There's a lot of advantages to a hybrid model. There's also some scheduling challenges with that I'll touch on. And then finally, the current state of operations which we're in, which is students return to classes via majority online model. Again, some data for you. This is spring 2020. It's hard to believe that we're talking about spring 2021, but I remind everyone it was the week of March 9th that this really hit our community. And really, we started to have to plan, and really Friday, March 13th is when we had to make significant decisions, which we made, inform the board, transition to an online format. In the spring of 2020, we had well over 4,100 sections that made. We offered significantly more than that, but actual sections that made. Of those, 3,453 of those sections were face-to-face. 610 were online, and then 39 were hybrid. As you see, when I look at our data, before the pandemic, about 9% of our students were taking classes completely online. An additional 17% were supplementing their schedule, taking a course online, but also taking the majority of their courses face-to-face. So nearly 3/4 of our students continue to take their courses face-to-face. Sections offered by time, as you see indicated there, 51% of our sections are offered between 8 a.m. and noon, over 1,700. 25% of our sections, are a little over 830, offered between noon and 3 p.m. We do have somewhat of a lull at 4%, or 153 offered between 3 in the afternoon and 5. Then 13% are offered after 5. Our evening students that are working mostly coming in and taking those courses. And then you see that 3% of our sections are taught between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. So kudos to our faculty, as well as our students that are ready to go, starting with 6 a.m. classes. You see the distribution of our courses by campus. The Valle Verde campus having the bulk of our courses at almost 1,500. Rio Grande and Trans Mountain both significantly over 300 courses. The Mission campus at 275. This is with the facilities that they had available to them. Obviously, with the new building that will be coming on, that number would grow. The Northwest at 224. Early College High School, 322. Here at the ASC, we do offer coursework here at the ASC with about 60 sections, some sections at Fort Bliss, and then finally almost 400 sections of dual credit courses. And those are distributed throughout the district at the 12 independent school districts that we partner with. The hybrid approach, we have, the board is well aware. I don't want to repeat to you. I know that you know what a hybrid approach is based on what we looked at and provided to you in June as we geared up for the fall semester. Again, the hybrid approach would probably be the most conducive to engagement at all levels, where you have one section where you're face-to-face and the next section where you're not. There are some safety challenges. So the spring of 2020, as I indicated, was about 26,500 students. This was pre-pandemic. Students were taking about 3 courses. In addition, we had about 620 third quarter enrollments. Those are in the continuing ed and non-credit sector of the institution where those courses are offered, but they're offered on our campuses as well. And then finally, 3,000 employees distributed throughout the district. So you see the kind of, you're looking at well over 30,000 individuals potentially being on our campuses. And then we have challenges as well with transportation and developing a schedule that works for students and having them understand that they'll have to be here one time per week or per section. The school districts, I know this is something that our partners at the school districts have worked very hard on. They are working with TEA. TEA mandates much of what they do. There is a lot of local influence on what they can do, and depending on the area of the state, some areas are experiencing, as we saw when the governor extended to 75%. South Texas, Victoria, and Laredo were exempted from that. And when we went to 50%, El Paso was exempted from that for a couple of weeks before we were able to get there and bring our cases down. But we worry about the school districts and the potential of schedules that could change with them. Childcare and finally work schedules. Many of our students work because they have to. It is part of their responsibility. And again, if there is a change to their schedule and the childcare issues that comes forward. The third option is to replicate what we're doing this fall and what we did for the summer as well, is that all courses that can be delivered online will be delivered. That number is actually going down. We are seeing that our technical enrollment continues to rise, and many of those technical courses require face-to-face or hands-on instruction in smaller groups adhering to all the CDC guidelines. As I show, there's the CTE courses, clinicals, and lab-intensive courses will continue to be offered in a hybrid approach where the lecture will be primarily online, but the hands-on will be face-to-face, smaller groups. Again, Vice President Smith, the deans, and the faculty have worked through those for the summer and fall. They are prepared to do that for the spring as well. When they do come in for those hands-on, they will adhere to all the CDC guidelines of social distancing and PPE. The vast majority of our colleagues, in fact, there's not a single institution when I'm on the calls with the 50 colleges in the state that in the fall was total face-to-face. Most did exactly what we did. In fact, all did what we did, which was a hybrid approach of the majority online, but some of those CTE courses face-to-face. After consultation with the cabinet members, obviously also being provided information directly from our faculty as well as our staff, it is our recommendation to the board that we continue with a majority online approach for the spring of 2021. Again, unfortunately, what we're seeing is cases are currently rising. I will touch on that significantly in my next presentation on the return to staff. And what we really see and totally understand why universities, this was primarily a university item, they're a very different revenue model and finance model than community colleges. There is a significant amount of revenue that comes from dining, from residence halls, from events on those particular campuses, from sports, exactly, Chair Haggerty, that really influences, and I certainly understand their revenue model. I don't envy the situation that they're in at all. I empathize with what they're dealing with. We are in a different situation, and as a result, we believe, just based on the safety and security of our faculty, staff, and students, that it's in our best interest that our recommendation to the board is that we continue in a majority online approach. I am happy to entertain any questions from any of the board members.
Dr. Sabata, this is Carmen. I do have a question. I appreciate the work that you and your team have put together to make these recommendations. I know that you're being very cautious, and I appreciate that because we have to ensure the safety of students and staff. What I'm looking for is something that we can come up with that guarantees that our students are not left out in the cold. I know that I've sent some situations your way and you've taken care of them, thank you. But it shouldn't take a board member to, somebody contacting us, because nobody is reaching out to the students. They're not returning emails. They're not returning phone calls. If we've got these people on staff and they're on the salary, Why is that happening? That's unacceptable. We should be reaching out to the students even more so now than before. And I don't know what you can do to hold people accountable, but that is totally unacceptable. And I know that some of the other board members have also received those kinds of issues.
Dr. Graham, I do not dispute that at all. It is unacceptable that a board member get, not that the role that the board plays, but that it has to get to the level of the board for some of these items to be resolved. We continue to refine. I have asked, and what I can do, I've asked each of the cabinet members to provide a report to me on the transitions that they have worked on with their respective areas and divisions to ensure that we continue to increase the level of service that we provide our students online as if we did in person. Better. Our goal is to do it better. And so while we have made great strides, there is still much work to do. I do not dispute that at all, Dr. Graham. I know that other board members have reached out, and I certainly appreciate it. I have no concern if the board has any issue or any concern that's brought to your attention. Please let me know so that we can follow up. And what I do is I reach out to the respective areas, the administrator, the vice president of those respective areas, and generally we are able to resolve it. But again, it shouldn't, I worry about the student that doesn't reach out to a board member. And I don't want to lose any student. I will touch in my report to the board later in our today's meeting where we are with enrollment. There is no student to lose. I worry that the class of 2020 will not participate in higher ed at the level of past classes, and that will affect our community. If we go into this vote, we will have the same spring of 2021. That means that class could potentially be impacted as well. So we will continue to get better, Dr. Graham. But I certainly agree with you, and when those reports are submitted to me, and I've received some already, they're not Cliff Notes versions. They're rather lengthy, which they should be. But I will send those to the board. I will review them and then send them to the board for review as well, so that you can see the kind of activities that our divisions and each of the respective areas are putting forth to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our students. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Okay. My other question is, have we thought about any way that we could get just some of the students that are not, I was talking to one in particular that I asked, why didn't you re-enroll? Oh, I can't really handle online classes. And I don't know how many of those we have, if it's a handful of them, or if it's 1,000 of them, or how many that just don't feel that they can make progress online. I was just wondering if there's not any way that we could kind of identify some of those students and then see if we can provide on-site some kind of train or classes, but not in large groups, you know, because otherwise those are going to get discouraged and fall by the wayside, or we could maybe get more of those back that just cannot see themselves on online classes.
Dr. Graham, it's a great point. There is, and we've had some team members at the institution as well, that it's been a difficult transition for some of our teams as well. They thrive. I thrive on the interaction with individuals and students as well. And so that it's been difficult for our faculty as well. I'd call on Vice President Smith to chime in on the kinds of activities that our faculty in particular, and that engagement that you're looking for, and just ask that he highlight some of the great things that our faculty are doing.
You know, before Mr. Smith does chime in, I'd like to say something on that. Dr. Graham, I feel for them, and I understand the frustration and how hard it is, because it's hard for even, you know, the ISDs, for some of these students to do it online. It's not for everybody. It's hard for them, but I would much rather them, you know, I know it sounds horrible, but I'd rather lose them as a student than lose them as a human being and their life. And even with smaller groups, the chances of, right now the CDC just came out with, you know, saying that it's the aerosols, it's not just the droplets, you know, that you can get sick from. And I know they wear masks, but no falta, you know, it doesn't fail for one person. It just takes one person to get sick. it's just not right. I just don't think right now is the time. And I think the way Dr. Sarata is doing it and being very data driven and the way as a team, the way they're handling it is great. I just rather lose them as a student than lose them as a human and a life lost.
Thank you, Ms. Nahara. Mr. Smith, I know that you're ready. Please proceed.
Thank you, Dr. Strada. Dr. Graham, we've heard you loud and clear over the past couple of board meetings. In late June, we had asked the Faculty Evaluations Committee when they come back in the fall, which of course they're back now, to begin to look at a way to incorporate online student engagement into the evaluation process to develop some sort of measure. We have a very robust evaluation procedure that we need to make sure that we're updating to reflect the current times. So that's part of what we're doing, but probably more important, Dr. Paula Mitchell has graciously agreed to head up a fall engagement initiative. And part of that initiative will be not only to provide best practices for faculty, but to reach out to current students to find out what their experience has been so far, to direct them to appropriate resources if needed, to clear any kind of hurdles that they're experiencing as part of their fall coursework. And then while we're not scheduling small group classes per se to meet face-to-face, what we are doing is we've looked at the Minimester 2 offerings, and we've expanded those tremendously for those students that weren't able to register at the beginning of the fall semester. And I know there is a marketing campaign that's been generated to point students in that direction, to let them know that it's not too late to register for classes in the fall semester at El Paso Community College, and to provide them some opportunity to get some credits this semester.
Thank you, that sounds good.
Hi,
this is.
Go ahead. I guess is that you, Ms. Thompson?
Yes, it was me.
Okay, go ahead.
So I guess I see it as a couple of different issues, and Dr. Graham, I'm not familiar, I guess, with the specific instances, but what I'm hearing is that the instances that I guess board members have been, the issues that have been brought to board members' attention have to do, and please correct me if I'm wrong, have to do, I guess, with service oriented, maybe, I don't know, like I guess a call for maybe financial aid or something like that. So I guess I see that as kind of one group of issues. I definitely appreciate the follow-up on that. I'm not too familiar on some of the specifics, or maybe it has to deal with, you know, whether faculty or you know, are they reaching out to the students and being proactive and being really, you know, trying their best, I guess, in this new online environment. So I see that really on like the service end. The other end of issues that are definitely concerning are those students that are struggling on a personal level, and then where we don't see them enrolling in the classes or dropping, or maybe won't enroll, you know, into the future. And what I'm hearing, at least from Mr. Smith, at least what the plan is that you all are going to do that survey, reach out to them, and to figure out what some of those hindrances are, which I think is a great idea. But I'm just curious as to whether and what those instances or concerns have been for those students now in this new environment. And so what I'm thinking of in terms of them really succeeding and going through their full potential, is it just, you know, access to internet connectivity? Is it they have mental health issues that are going on just as a result of the seclusion? Is it that they have childcare issues, and so it makes them it makes it harder for them to maybe focus on going through their studies, because they are, as many of us are, also trying to take care of their children and helping, you know, them maneuver the day-to-day of their own online classes. And so I'm just kind of curious as to what we're doing on that end, if what you're speaking to, Mr. Smith, addresses that as well. And what are we hearing on that? I'm really curious to see what that pulse is. And I guess does the program or the proactive measures that you're taking to address that in response to the issues that Dr. Graham raised, is that a component of that?
And I can address some of that, Ms. Sanchez. I have always thought that somewhere along the line, we should come up with something like a student support center where they can channel all of the issues that students are facing, because with this pandemic, it's been all over the place. The ones I've sent to Dr. Serrata most recently have been, I tried to reach my instructor, he never answered. I had to make a decision before the deadline because I wasn't sure or making progress on my class. So I ended up dropping the class because the instructor never responded. That's the kind of stuff that's unacceptable. Now, that's not to say that all of the instructors are doing that. As a matter of fact, we're getting some wonderful positive comments all over the place. I just sent to him the ones that are not good, because they need to be resolved. But in speaking with other students, they do say, you know what, I've got 4 kids, they're all at home. I'm trying to help them log on to their school assignments or instruction. I can't be taking classes while I'm trying to connect my kids, and so I can't go back. So yes, the child care burden that the school districts have placed on the parents has been significant. Even if it's one child, it can drive you crazy if you're having to connect them to the classroom and keep them focused. Other students are older and they're dealing with their grandparents dealing with grandkids because the parents are working. So it's all kinds of situations, I can't go back to college because I had to, I was laid off and now I'm looking for a job. I've got to put that as a priority because of the support of the family. So, and there are emotional issues, I know I have a fear, I'm not leaving my house. And I understand, Bonnie, that we don't need to bring them into the building, but somehow we've got to figure out a way to reach them that's innovative, that they have someone that they can contact directly at the college and not be calling all over the place and they can't get hold of anybody because everybody's working remotely and then they're not calling back, or that the emails are not being responded. That's my biggest concern. That employees are being paid a salary, they need to deliver on returning phone calls at minimum or returning emails.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Dr. Graham. My only thing was, I meant like not having them back at a campus in a regular setting, even spread out. Now, if we were to do it, maybe this is something that we consider, like the ISDs have been doing it, where it's still an online class, but there's 1 or 2 in a classroom doing the class or taking the class. Does that make sense? 2 or 3, whatever it is, just like the ISDs are doing it. Now that is an option. I just meant not having a professor there teaching a course to 10, 15 people in a classroom setting. That's the only thing. But I completely agree that we need to find innovative ways to help them.
So you should be okay, Bonnie, if we have, for example, let's say you're taking a class in child development and you're taking it online, but there's a student or 2 that don't feel comfortable online, that they could come into the classroom where the instructor is delivering the instruction and be there physically while all the other 20 or 30 are online. That's kind of a configuration I was kind of seeking. I totally agree with you that we're not bringing the large number of students and exposing everybody to, increased numbers of COVID and all that. We don't want that.
No. I don't know. I guess we would have to ask Dr. Serrata and others to maybe put the data together and just see. Let's see how it's going with the ISDs. I mean, they've already started doing it. They've already seen cases of people, and they're doing it with the students taking the course online. They're on the computer, so there's no difference if the professor's there or they're doing it like in front of them or they're doing it on the computer. What's the difference? Does that make sense? Just have them be at the campus. It's like the ISDs have them, where it's just 2 to 3 students in a room, very few, because there's not going to be that many, I hope, at the college level. Maybe we just have a few, but just maybe Dr. Sarata, you can look into that and see what you all think.
No, I think that this is part of the challenge. There's no doubt. It's been 35 years since I was an undergraduate student, but and quite frankly, online courses didn't exist at that time. I was an undergraduate student, and I probably would not have been a good undergraduate student. I have 2 children at home, and one is adapted very well, and the other one is still challenged. And so I think that we will continue to get better. We will continue to reach out to students. I know that Mr. Smith and the deans and our faculty continue. There's great work, and I don't want, and Dr. Graham has said it repeatedly, we have tremendous faculty that are on top of it, that go the extra mile. We just want to make sure that no student falls through the cracks. And so, Dr. Graham, I've written down a note. We do have a help desk where we get a significant number of calls, but I'm also I'm intrigued by your student support center concept, and it's something that Student Services, Dr. Gonzalez and all of his team have done a great job of transitioning to Blackboard Collaborate, in which they have virtual meetings with students. But there's always more. There's always more, and telephone is old technology, but still good technology. That I know that Dr. Giron and her team are moving forward in launching a call center. Ms. Sanchez mentioned earlier, there are some specific areas that traditionally bottleneck in the enrollment process. As someone who worked very closely in those areas as part of my career, admissions and registrar is one, financial aid is another. And those are the first 2 offices that Dr. Giron and her team, Marco Hernandez, have developed a call center that they're implementing for the spring term, so that students will not, it's the type that if you receive no one answers, it actually tells you, we will call you back in 15 minutes. And it's to that level of sophistication. So that will help on the front end. I know, again, in the professional development, there's continuous offerings on increasing engagement, because it is hard to be engaged online, and increasing engagement with our faculty and staff. And I know that we, again, focus on the challenges, but there's many successes. I know, Dr. Graham, that you're on Twitter, and all of Socorro is on Twitter regularly, as am I. I saw a feed just this week where one of our math faculty, Professor Fan Chen, indicated that her class had ended, and 35 minutes later, she was still on with her students because she was continuing to teach them the concept, and they wanted to stay on, and she was willing to do that. That's one of the many, many stories that we have of a tremendous and dedicated, passionate faculty that have transitioned rather rapidly. But I agree, no student can fall through the cracks. And so we will continue to get better at this. I would ask that you give us an opportunity. Again, I'll provide to the board with a report of that transition, as well as potential concepts to develop what you're speaking to. The one student that it's just not working for. How do we deal with that student?
The reason I like Student Support Center is because it covers everything. Having worked with a call center, I can tell you that we started getting a slew of calls about, I can't log on, I can't, so then a different call center was set up with the support for just the technology issues, but the support center can cover, I don't have any food, I don't have any a laptop, or I don't have this, I don't have childcare. It can encompass a huge load of
it becomes
issues.
a hotline, if you will, the red phone.
Kind of like the hotline, right? And then it helps us identify, do we need to create more, like, I had to ask one of the students, hey, can you find out if there's a tutoring center? And then I called you eventually to find out, because the student was lost and didn't know that we had tutoring, and just things that if it's a student support center, that person has
Access to all the
right,
information.
or to give you the number, here's where you call for that. And then it goes, you know, it's just something that we can do above and beyond. And again, I don't want to take away from the fact that, you know, you guys have done a phenomenal job.
But there's more to do. There's more to do, and we will work on this, Dr. Graham. Again, we'll move forward with Dr. Cohen and her team implementing the call center for, in particular, admissions and financial aid, those two offices first. But in the interim, we will also work on the help desk. Will continue the log-on issues that goes through the help desk. That's under Dr. Hiron and IT, and they've done a great job with that, and their call number has increased. The remote toolkit that we published, I will share with you, most of the questions that I receive from any board member, I try to solve them myself first. And when I go online, I'm able to find the answer almost always. If I can't, then I ask a staff member or administrator to help with that. But by and large, I can, but I certainly understand as well, if you're in the midst of the class and you panic and I can't find it, but I go through and I click through the COVID website and I'm almost able to find all of those answers. Now, I don't have an answer when someone doesn't return a call. I don't have an answer when someone doesn't return an email. Those are things that we continue to share that message on how important it is to do that, because we don't want to lose any student. We just don't. But I will work on with the team on your student support center concept. And I feel rather confident that we can have something in place as we go through the enrollment process, but definitely as we start the spring term.
Especially if we're looking at keeping kind of the same setup, you know, that they're not going to be coming in where they can talk to people, you know, face to face.
That's another one, Dr. Graham, that our team has also explored, and I think it's a great suggestion too. Our team has explored setting up appointments for students to be able to say, you know, I'm having issues, I just can't get it done online, where we're able to set up an appointment. And we are looking at opening labs, opening computer labs to be able to facilitate that, again, by appointment, where we're not having more than 10 people gathered at any time, but to also be able to develop that. So I will report back to the board on our progress with those. I think they're great suggestions. I think that we will continuously improve on the services that we provide to students to ensure their success.
And by the way, the marketing is looking good. It really is.
Mr. Heine, Ms. Moe, and their teams have done a great job. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Serrata?
Yeah, I do. This is Christina. What can we do immediately then, right? I don't want to wait another month. I don't want to wait another 2 months, because I definitely think that based on the concerns that Dr. Graham brought up, there's definitely a sense of urgency. And so I ask that because I'm wondering, you know, if it's a funding issue, then could we explore the use of any CARES Act or any funds that have already kind of been filtered to the college at the onset when this all started? And I'm saying that so that we can really start addressing those concerns, because as Dr. Graham had mentioned, there is those students who are now and probably will for a while continue to fall through the cracks. And so is there something that can be immediately implemented, looked at to address, other than, you know, we'll come back with the plan? I think the plan, and I certainly appreciate that, we want to do it right. We want to make sure everything is good. But what can we do now to address some of those concerns in the immediacy? Because it is an urgent issue.
Yes, ma'am. No, Ms. Sanchez, you're absolutely correct. And I was only speaking specifically for the Student Support Center, and to be able to provide the board with what I had asked for was a display from each of the respective cabinet areas to show that how they have transitioned. In the interim, we're immediately moving forward with the call center that I spoke to and implementing that call center. We have already, for instance, with CARES dollars, we purchased this and brought to the attention of this board almost 1,500 laptops. We have distributed 1,000 laptops to date. 417 have gone to students. We purchased 500 hotspots. We've distributed 86 of those already. We're continuing to move forward on immediate action as well, Ms. Sanchez, but it's a point very well taken. The concept of developing a student support center kind of hotline That we will, I believe that we can implement rather quickly, but that will take a little bit of planning. But the call center is moving forward that I described earlier, where a student goes into a queue and as opposed to no one answering, it actually says, this is when we will call you back, leave your number, and this is who will call you back. That is being implemented. Dr. Giron and Dr. Gonzalez are moving forward with that. So we expect that to move forward and be ready. So I share the same sense of urgency, ma'am. I'm not going to say we need a plan. We're going to move forward and implement these things that I described. The only thing that I'd say is to send to you the written plans that I had, the written synopsis, not a plan, the written synopsis of what has already been done in that transition, as well as how we're moving forward with the call center that was described.
Anybody else have any questions for Dr. Serrata?
Yes, I do. This is John.
Hey, Mr.
Dr. Serrata, you mentioned that we've supplied all of these computers and a lot of the hardware. What's the accountability on that? Do we still own them, or have we given those computers away? If they're given to the students, how do we know that they're going to continue to benefit the student? I guess that's not so much concern as if we still own them in some capacity, how do we track them? How do we have accountability for them?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mr. Exer. We do own them, and we do loan them out, and our students are very good about returning them. Now, if they're enrolled and they're continuously enrolled, then we allow them to continue to utilize the technology. However, once they are no longer enrolled, then we do have a mechanism in place. I'd ask Dr. Giron and her team to chime in, but we do have a mechanism in place where we're able to retrieve that technology. They're obviously tagged, they're college property, but I'll ask Dr. Giron. Dr. Giron, if you can please chime in as well.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Serrata, and good evening, board members. Dr. Serrata just detailed the process very well. We do check out the laptops to students on a semester basis. They do return them at the end of the semester, but if they need them again for their following semester, we recheck them out to them. And the reason we're rechecking them out on a semester basis is just for accountability and make sure that we also provide all the updates, check laptops, do any maintenance. But as Dr. Serrata mentioned, the students have been extremely responsible in returning laptops, checking them out. So it's been very successful. And we've done this several years now, the checkout program. But this year again, because of COVID and the CARES funding, we were able to procure additional laptops.
Dr. Giron, I have a question on the laptops. I noticed that the district that, the graduating seniors were allowed to keep them. They paid a small fee for them, a very small fee. I think it was like $25, $30. And only because one of the parents called me because she paid it and the son didn't get it or something. Is there a way that could be considered, or is that not cost effective for the district? Because that way that we would ensure that they take real good care of it. But I don't know if that would be something that could be considered. Because you could also say, we provide you or we give you laptops, but then it could be, would it be considered a gift or public funds, or I don't know. Okay. Mr. Ortega is going to chime in.
And Dr. Graham, we have not done that, but it's something we can look into, especially after we assess the process this year. So again, it's not something we have considered so far, but we can assess the process this year. And thank you for that information.
Thank you, Dr. and Dr. Graham. I don't know how much we would indicate that they had depreciated in 1 year. And I think that would probably weigh in. We'd have to check with Mr. Ortega and Scott Hulse, legal counsel, to indicate if we tied a small fee to it, that's possible. But we have to be careful that it's not seen as a gift of public resources.
I'm just thinking of the ones that are headed onto the university, hopefully all of them.
I will ask Dr. Wilson to write us a check for those laptops.
That would be good.
No, I think you're right. I think it's something that we can explore, but these are brand new. We just received them. They're rather pricey.
Oh, they're beautiful.
They are. They're very nice. And so I would imagine that it would be a longer process than just the one semester a year, but it's something that we can explore. It's a great suggestion.
On your time off,
Yes, sir, Mr. Exer.
This is John Upser. Forgive me for being cynical, but I've had experience where we have donated or that we've had ownership. I've been in an organization where we've had ownership and we've donated those things. And I mean, as much as I admire our student body, you're going to find the 10%, and that being some unknown factor, that however you look at it, will not return them. And if we get a significant number as 10%, that become a significant dollar value that somebody's responsible for. Not only are they not there, but you have a student that just all of a sudden doesn't attend class anymore and doesn't have the integrity to return them. And being cynical, that's going to happen. So what would be our procedure? Are we acknowledging that fact and we're looking into it, or are we just saying, no, that's not going to happen?
No, we acknowledge that, Mr. Uxer, and it's similar to, for instance, Title IV federal Pell Grants. Students, that's an entitlement program. Students are entitled to that program. They receive it. It pays for their tuition and fees, and then they receive a check for whatever is left after their tuition and fees. If they do not do their part and they do not attend class and pass classes, then we have to return a portion of that Pell Grant to the federal government, and we put a hold on that student's account. That student then owes those resources back to the college. And so it would be a similar fashion where a student checks out a book at the library and doesn't return it. Same with our technology. If they check out a laptop and or a hotspot and don't return it, we have a process to put a hold on that student and then collect that back from them. So we do acknowledge, you're right, Mr. Uxer, we hope for the best, we plan for the worst. And so we do have mechanisms in place between Dr. Iron's division as well as Ms. Shaughnessy and her division on collections and how we are able to get that equipment back. We acknowledge that happens.
I'm sure if we make a provision where Dr. Iron will be able to counsel those particular individuals, that we'll have no problem.
And we do. They sign an agreement when they come in and check those out. We're very clear on what the expectations and what they have to do. By and large, the vast majority of our students do a good job of returning those items, but we do have a process or a number of students who do not. We've built processes in place to mitigate and to deal with those situations.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Srota? Dr. Srota, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
You're asking us to do this now. It's 4 months out. What is the latest we can come up to a decision?
It's a great question, Chair Haggerty. The reason we ask you now is what we have found with our student body in particular is the assurance of understanding how courses are going to be offered. And that's why we start enrollment. We delayed it. We're going to start the enrollment process. We were scheduled to start on Thursday. There are certain things we have to do within the banner system, within the Elution the ERP system to change. You know, this course was going to be at the Valle Verde campus. Now it's going to be online or majority online. So we will not start the enrollment process until Wednesday, October 7th to give us time to make sure that we make those changes. But unfortunately, I would prefer, and again, it's the board's decision, but I would prefer if the board move forward with the recommendation. And if for some reason there is a vaccine that's available.
My next question.
Yes, sir.
How tough is it to change it if the vaccine?
It's tough. It's not an easy transition, but it's a transition that we can make work with our faculty, with our staff, reaching out to students, whether we were to go in a hybrid to help them with that, as opposed to completely face-to-face. All of the data and the research indicates, despite pontifications, that a widely available vaccine will not be available until third quarter of 2021 at the earliest.
Yeah, I was thinking more of a hybrid in case they did.
Absolutely. That would be the way that I would recommend to our team, and we would recommend to the board if we needed to transition back, it would be a hybrid, not completely face-to-face.
Okay, this is a action item. I need a motion.
Motion made, sir.
Second. Any other discussion?
Hold on, can I get clarification for the record what the motion is? Which option?
The motion is discussion and action regarding the literary method of instruction for the spring 2021 semester.
And that would be, Ms. Sanchez, in a majority online environment as we are conducting coursework in the fall.
Okay, thank you. That's the clarification I was looking
Yes,
for.
ma'am.
I second.
Any other discussion? Hold.
Mr. Uxer,
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Ms. Nájera.
Aye.
Ms. Pina.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye. 1.9.
Item 1.9.2, update and discussion regarding the college phased return back to campus plan.
Good evening. Thank you so much. We certainly appreciate, on behalf of the faculty, staff, and our student body, we appreciate the board taking action so that we're able to let our students know what format we're proposing to the board. I would like to update the board and provide another update on the preliminary staff return to campus operations. As we move forward with our instructional mode, sorry, gentlemen, yeah, I'm not on that. I'm not on the legislative one yet. I'm still back on the other one.
Dr. Serrano, if they get that up, is there a way that later you could maybe, they can place something on the website to give direction to those that are visiting the website?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have the pop-up COVID piece that comes up, and that's where we'll put it, Dr. Graham. Absolutely. So again, the tenets of the plan and what were the objectives of the plan for a staff return, much like we indicated for the modality that we provide instruction to our students, are the same. We want to make sure that we protect the health and safety of the college's faculty, staff, and students, as well as our campus visitors, that our functions remain uninterrupted, and that we continue to improve on those functions, Dr. Graham and members of the board, that we have a proposed return to campus plan for your consideration. It is informed and guided by the CDC, the coordinating board, our city, our county, the state, as well as local COVID-19 restrictions in mind. The data is something that is paramount. I will go through the data very specifically on the 5 areas that we're looking at. And unfortunately, just based on what we've seen in our community, between what we saw in March and what we were seeing in the June timeframe, then it's somewhat tempered. And now, unfortunately, what we're seeing immediately after Labor Day is that we have an ability to shift back should the data indicate that we need to, that we're able to shift back to online remote employment assignments should the situation merit. Here are the 5 metrics that we are looking at. We look at them very specifically. We actually, I review this with not only cabinet, we've created a smaller return to campus operations team that consists of human resources, employee relations, our emergency management coordinator, myself. We continue to look at these particular areas. We meet weekly now and just go over the data together to make sure that we're all on the same page. And we also ensure that that our offices and campuses continue to transition. And what I mean by that is that we continue to lay the taping down of where the 6 feet are, the signs up of that you have to wear a face covering, plexiglass where it's merited, training of individuals when they have to return. But here's the data that we look at. The first one is the 14 days of decreasing cases. This is something that is very familiar to everyone. This is something that when the pandemic began, you heard the CDC, Dr. Fauci with infectious diseases, looking at this 14-day of downward trajectory. I will share with the board that we had seen, and this was a metric that we were seeing headed in the right direction, Unfortunately, we are now seeing that it has headed in the wrong direction. We had seen 2 14-day periods where it had fallen. From a peak of over 3,000 cases to it fell to 3,136, down to 1,629, down to 1,392. There's currently a couple of days remaining in this 14-day period, and unfortunately, we've already surpassed the previous 14-day period. We're up to 2,092 cases right now, unfortunately. So that is a benchmark we're currently not meeting. The second one is a rolling moving 7-day positivity rate. The guidance is that we should be at less than or equal to 5%, and not just for one day, but for a series of days. Unfortunately, this last 14-day period, which has not concluded, there was only one day where we were below 5%. We were at 4.9% on September the 18th. Every other day in this 14-day period, we've been above 5%. We actually rose all the way up to 8.25%. Today, this morning, we were at 7.76%. So this is a metric that we are not currently meeting. The cumulative positivity rate is the third metric that we look at based on guidance from the CDC, as well as the president's reopening plan. This rate should be less than or equal to 10%. Despite the fact that this rate continues to go up, recently it is currently at 8.43% today, but we are meeting the metric. We are below the 10% metric, but unfortunately it is heading in the wrong direction, but it is still below 10%. The robust testing program. The CDC indicates to begin phase 1 of a reopening plan that we should be seeing tests from test to result less than or equal to 4 days for phase 1. Every single day since August the 15th, we have been reporting delayed cases. So that in and of itself indicates that we are not meeting that benchmark of 4 days. And there's lots of reasons why. I've read about them. I've heard about them. It is a private firm that wasn't delivering on the city and county's expectations. I know that they have transitioned, but even today we saw 5 delayed cases that were reported today on top of the 265 cases that were reported today. Pardon me, nine delayed cases were reported today. So we're not meeting that benchmark. And then finally, we look at the infection rate. And what the CDC indicates is that you should be looking at no more than 25 cases per 100,000 population in your community. So we have just approximately 850,000 people in our county, which means that we should see no more than approximately 212 cases per day. We were meeting that benchmark every day for the last 28 days until today. Today, our cases are at 256 new cases that were reported today, which means that we are not meeting that benchmark either. So of these key data points that we monitor daily, again, Dr. Peña, Ms. Field, myself, Ivan Flores, Hector Padilla, as well as Cabinet, we share this widely across, and I shared this in the State of the College address as well. These are the 5 metrics that we look at every single day. And unfortunately, currently, we are not meeting the metrics that we have defined based on CDC, county, city, state guidelines, as well as the president's plan. We are only meeting one of these 5 benchmarks. A recap of that, these are the 5 items that we continue to look at. Obviously, it begins with the health and safety of our faculty, staff, and students. Again, continuing to ensure that all functions and services are uninterrupted, that it's data informed. To even begin the process, we have to see that 14-day, as well as meeting each of the other 5 metrics. We will continue to update the board, and we'll continue to update and seek board approval during future meetings. I will continue to update the board both electronically through emails to the board in between board meetings, as well as during board meetings. And then once I update the board, then we turn around, and for instance, depending, based on where we are, we will provide an update to the full college staff, the faculty staff. We will send out a general email just updating and indicating, here's what we shared with the board, here's where we are. Once we do start meeting more than one of the metrics that we're looking at, the goal would be to meet all the metrics. Then we will continue to look at phase one, which, and the dates we had to put to be determined because we're not at a point yet that we're ready to begin. Well, we began with 25%, then we would shift to 40%. Phase three would be 50%. You notice that we indicate essential staff. By the time we get to phase four, we're also looking at non-essential because we're looking at more than half of our staff that would be returning. In phase five, we would get up to 3/4. And I do have a date on the 6th phase because we still believe that this is when we'll be able to implement that 6th phase based on everything that's out there that's being reported, widely reported by reliable sources, is that between August and December of next year, we believe that we'll be able to get back to 90 to 100% of our departmental staff, because we believe by then there will be a vaccine that will be widely available to our community. I will continue. I'm happy to entertain any questions from the board, and I will continue to keep the board informed and present to the board on where we are. I can assure you as well, there's some staff, our police department, many of the IT staff, our Mr. Lobato's crew of physical plant and maintenance and operations, our contracted services through Olympus. They have been on campus. They will continue to be on our campuses. I want to be in my office. The data just currently doesn't support it yet, but I'm happy to entertain any questions or receive any direction that the board may see.
My question is, Dr., well, who determines which 25%? And my other question is, I'm one of those 25%. I don't want to really go to work, tell them I have to go to work, and I catch COVID. And the guy that didn't come to work didn't get COVID.
So I will answer the first question on the 25%. So each of the respective cabinet members, down to the administrators, down to all of the departments, have identified who those essential are. And so on the 25%, what we're indicating, Judge, is that 25% will be here at any given time. That doesn't mean that only 25% of the staff will come back. There are people that do have underlying health conditions that are more at risk, and they have gone through human resources and through employee relations to provide that documentation so that we have indicated that, and they will not be in that first 25%. We've also indicated that it wouldn't be just, for instance, the Administrative Services Center or just the Valle Verde campus. It would be all of our campuses. And so that's how we've identified who would fall into those. Will there be challenges? Yes. And so we have worked very closely with Ms. Marin and Mr. Ortega and Scott Hulse, as well as with Dr. Peña and his team, to make sure that we're following all of the guidelines and best practices. I can't thank Dr. Graham enough, who's willing to share what Socorro's doing, and that's very helpful. I can't, other members of our board are sharing what is being done at different entities throughout the region that is helpful to us as well. And we monitor, and I check with my colleagues across the state to see how they're moving forward with that as well. It's a great question. I will let Mr. Ortega now respond to our liability.
The difficulty, Chair Haggerty, is practically speaking for anybody that contracts COVID-19, whether it's an employee or not.
Hi, this is Christina. I can't hear you. Can you get closer to the speaker, please?
Sure, I was. Can you hear me now?
No.
I've got a microphone next to me. I don't think it's working.
That's good. Thank you.
A little better?
You still sound a little far away. We can't really hear you.
Is this a little better?
Yes.
Okay, what I was saying, I think the difficulty, practically speaking, for anybody that returns,
it's going to be very difficult, I suspect, and this is true not just for the college, but for any employer. For any employee that contracts COVID-19, it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to prove that there's a causal connection between them contracting COVID-19 and proving that they actually contracted that at work. Based on what we've seen on the scientific literature that's out there, and it's very scarce, you could contract the disease through respiratory droplets by touching surfaces that have that disease. So it's very difficult, I think, for anybody, even if employees are returning, to be able to show that somehow they contracted the disease because of work.
And I understand what you're saying, but you also understand that people sue hoping that you'll pay them off instead of going to court. It's not the cost of winning and losing, it's the cost of going to court. It's the cost of the money.
Right. So I think one of the options that perhaps, and this is something that we may potentially have to take a look at, and we haven't seen this, but if it's a situation that happens at work, I don't know if potentially that would also be something that would be covered under workers' comp, whether it's an occupational illness or hazard. Those are things that I think we would need to explore more carefully to see if that's an avenue for employees who contract COVID-19 at work, for them to pursue that exclusive remedy.
And what I would like to really see is if you have 100% of the essential workers, you stagger them. So many come in on Monday, so many come in on Tuesday. And that way you don't, but I can see it coming. Why am I coming in and you're not coming? And we get paid the same amount of money. I want to, my philosophy is 100% or none.
Pretty much my proposal.
Chair Haggerty, that one would be more for me than legal counsel, other than if it's challenged, then obviously we would need legal counsel to weigh in. But that is the intent, save that there are people that will have a legitimate health-related concern that has been, that we receive guidance not only from legal counsel, but based on all of the different regulations that have been released, that we're able to do that through human resources. That would be the goal. Now, it would be more difficult, Chair, when we say phase one at 25%, that'll be scheduled. We'll have to work with our individual areas to schedule that. For instance, 25% come in 1 week, another 25%.
Ask for volunteers. Or...
Yeah, no, we are absolutely, we're going to absolutely ask for volunteers first.
Sir, can I share with you how we transition in, because we already went through that transition. So once you identify your essential workers, let's say that, one department has, 10 essential workers, then yes, you give them a choice. We're gonna need to have half of you coming in the morning, half of you coming in the afternoon. So you, as an employee, it empowers you to say, oh, I'd rather be there in the afternoon, and the other ones to say, I'd rather be there in the morning. And so we transition like that. We had half of us working half a day, and then the other half a day. At first it was Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Half of us were coming, and then the following week we alternated. But you had the schedule and you always knew. And then eventually, after we had done that for quite a while, then it went into, okay, now you're gonna need to be here the full day, but do you wanna come in Monday and Wednesday and Friday, or do you wanna come in Tuesday, Thursday, and the following Monday? So you work with the employees, give them some choice, and then you get to the point where, okay, now we're all coming back at the same time, but we're only working from 9 to 3. If you were originally scheduled 8 to 5, you were only coming 9 to 3, so that you had more people, flexibility again, until we transition to where you're now in regular schedule. And we are.
No, Dr. Graham, we have utilized all of your suggestions, including developing an app. And our team, they took the challenge and they saw the app and they think that they've created a better app. So we'll be happy to share that with you as well. But again,
for students?
No, this one for our staff.
No, so we're still ahead of you, because ours is for students, as you well know.
Yes, but that's the way we would go about it, Chair Haggerty. So I certainly appreciate, because you're right. That is the concern amongst, and there's some team members that may indicate, well, I don't think I should ever have to go back And we will deal with those accordingly.
Yeah,
as
they
well.
just need to get another job. They can't carry dead weight.
We will deal with those accordingly as well and following the processes. But they're great questions. I'm hopeful that the data improves. I'm hopeful that this is the last, that Labor Day was the last hiccup that we see in our community and that we again start to see. Just last week, we were meeting 3 of the 5 metrics that we're monitoring, but unfortunately today we're only meeting 1 of those metrics.
You don't think Thanksgiving week is gonna throw us off into another?
Dr. Graham, it's a really good point. What we anticipate again in this smaller group of Dr. Peña and I and Ms. Fields, as well as Mr. Flores and Mr. Padilla, we think what will happen is that we'll probably get to a point where we can come back for a short period of time. And then unfortunately what you're saying is our
Go
concern.
back to the.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying, this up with everybody.
And that's why the plans need to have a lot of flexibility because, you know, it's easier to transition one way than it is the other way.
It is. And so again, I long to be in the office. I do. It's not as easy for me to work remotely. I just miss the engagement. I miss the collegiality. I miss seeing everyone, but I'm also very cognizant of the concerns and the risks. And so we will continue to look at that data. We'll continue to update the board. I will send electronic updates between the board meetings if we believe that we need a special board meeting because data looks great and we think that we can implement or begin to implement. Then I will reach out to the board. Pam and I will reach out to the board to schedule that for you.
What we have been very careful in doing is identifying, like you said, through HR, the individuals, the staff members that are, you know, susceptible to either they have a compromised immune system or they have other medical issues and be very sensitive to those. Of course, in our case, you know, a lot of those are going to be teaching online and remotely versus coming into the buildings. But those do need to be identified through HR with medical evidence and everything. And certainly we need to accommodate for people that have those conditions, you know.
And we're documenting those and accommodating those accordingly. That
You
is
know, and
something-
I appreciate
Please.
you all, Dr. Sarata, if you don't mind.
Please.
I appreciate you accommodating all those people with health concerns and underlying health conditions, but I can tell you that I had no underlying health conditions. I had nothing. And the only reason I wasn't put on a ventilator is because I didn't let them. Not just because somebody is healthy overall does mean, you know, it's okay, let's send them back. You know, I appreciate you taking the concerns and the health issues into consideration, but just, you know, I'd rather treat everybody as if they were immune compromised, as if something is wrong with them, because you never know who this is going to affect and how bad it's going to affect their body. It's a horrible, I'm sure you will know, it's a horrible virus. It's very painful and it affects everybody, not just those immune compromised. So I would rather treat everybody the same as if they were, because nobody's life is less important or anybody is, you know, less susceptible to getting this. We're going to get it. People can get it regardless. So I appreciate that, but I just really appreciate even more if we take a little bit, you know, more time and just be very, very strategic and very careful about, I know we want to go back. I know we need to go back. We can't always be at home, but just really, really, gosh, take our time and figure out a good way to do this.
Thank you for keeping that reminder alive all the time, Bonnie. We really appreciate it.
Any more questions for Dr. Schreiber? This is not an action item, so we
Sure.
want to correct.
Yeah, hi, Judge, it's Christina. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up something here before we move on really quickly, and it goes to the video. So when we're talking about the return to campus sort of strategy, I think the other issue I wanted to raise was the video feed. So I don't know, you know, from an operational standpoint, if that is possible. Can we turn on our videos? Is one question at board members. Two, the second question is that same allowance allowed for members of the public to turn on their videos as well? So in other words, to participate fully in the meeting with the video. And then thirdly, if the board members are allowed to participate via video because there is the capability to do so, is there also similar capabilities so that we can see the feed that's in the meetings where you all are? I know based on the governor's suspension of the Texas Open Meetings Act that we can participate via video conference or telephone conference, but I think that it's helpful to anybody just to kind of see the demeanor and when you're trying to figure out who's next to talk. And so I'd really, if we can, to the extent, and who can, right? Every one of us has different technology capabilities. If we can be, if that can happen, because I've tried to turn on my video and somebody shuts me down. So
I think that has to be put on the agenda so we can discuss it. It's not on the agenda.
I don't know if we need action. It's really more of a technological question, whether or not we can just turn on the video or not. Is that possible?
I think you can turn your video on.
Okay, I'll try. No one shut me down.
They've got it.
I think Mr. Ortega is gonna chime in on this.
So
Okay.
let me begin. Let me begin, Ms. Sanchez. I certainly appreciate that. I'll ask Dr. Iron and her team who run all of the technology on our piece on the capability. For instance, the vast majority of the meetings that I have are on several different platforms. Zoom, the one that we're currently using, Microsoft Teams, WebEx. There's so many different ones. I think I use 5 or 6 different ones. When I am working remotely from home, and my camera's always on. And it's one of these where, I can see everyone else depending on what kind of platform. With Teams, I can only see 9 right now, but I know that's getting better. With Zoom, I can scroll through and see everyone. So I'll ask Dr. Iron and her team to chime in on that capacity. The devices that the college has provided me allow me to do that, and I'll be online and have my camera on one of them. I'll have the other one open so that I can take notes and or research if something comes up that I'm not aware of. And then I have a laptop that I have open as well, because if I'm working on a document, so I usually have minimum of 3, sometimes 4 devices. But Dr. Iron, if you and your team can chime in on that capacity.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Serrata. Ms. Sanchez, the technology and the platform do allow for video. So again, the only thing we need is a decision to be made by Dr. Serrata and the board for us to turn on the video. But again, the platform does allow for video conferencing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Giron. I appreciate that. Mr. Ortega, maybe this is where you chime in. I don't see that as a board action. That is more, unless you correct me if I'm wrong, is it just a matter of allowing that capability or not? If you could chime in on that, please.
Can you hear me now? Is this
No, I can't. I just heard you to say I can't hear you.
How about now? Is that a little better?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. We're switching microphones here, but I agree with you, Ms. Sanchez, that it's not a matter for the board to have to have an action item on this. It's a matter of convenience.
Yeah.
And so if the decision, I think, without necessarily taking a vote, but if the consensus is that you want to have video capability, then I don't think it's an item that necessarily requires a per se action item.
Yeah.
But I want you to understand that if I don't want to use it, I don't have to use it.
Right.
Okay, as long as you understand.
Well, you can also use it, but not have your picture on it if you just don't want us to see it. Well, the other one would work just perfect. You would just have the screen in front of your face.
Yes, sir. No.
You don't have to worry about seeing my face.
We want to see your face, Judge.
Okay, so if we can if that can be turned on, or at least somebody doesn't turn me off if I do that next meeting, that would be great. And then also, I guess, to the question as to whether or not we can see the boardroom, is that possible with this particular platform?
But keep in mind that the meetings are not taking place in the boardroom.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. I know that they're in the conference room, so that's why I asked the question as to whether or not there was capabilities, I guess, in the room that you all are in right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the room itself.
They'd have to get a tape measure and
opposite corners. But Dr. Giron, would that be possible?
Sure.
Yes, it will. And we'll have to allow or provide each one of you a device for the camera.
I know that at the SISD board meetings, sometimes they do hold them in the boardroom, but they are not seated at the regular seating area. They put tables and chairs away, with the social distancing between them, but they're all in the room, but they're not next to each other.
Sure, there's many options, and I will work with Pam and present a plan to Dr. Serrata for our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Sanchez, it's Francisco again. One recommendation I would have is if the board decides, and that's the consensus of the board, to go forward with a video setup for the meetings, I would recommend against having members of the public appear by video. I think that may be disruptive. What I've seen in the past, and I've seen it now with several boards, is that they either send an email or they have the ability to call in for that designated period early in the agenda, as opposed to necessarily having the ability to speak and be seen by video.
Understood, as long, and I think we already provide that for members of the public. If they want to, they can certainly call in, is my understanding. So that capability has never gone away. There's always the opportunity for them to participate. So that is fine. Obviously just adhering to ensure that they do have that ability to pose any questions.
I believe we can get a YouTube channel and they can do it and they can watch it on YouTube. That's what we do with the courts. If you want to watch PP2, you can watch it on YouTube.
So we currently, this is Pam. So currently our audio feed for these meetings are being streamed on YouTube live. So they are able to access it that way. And it would be the same if we start showing the board video, it would be accessed live. For public comment, we provide in the opening paragraph how people can email an email address for them to mail in questions. We have not had very many of those except for at the very beginning of the process, but it's put on all of the postings and in the agendas as well.
I have a question. Judge Haggerty has a problem with us putting a camera in front of him during the board meetings, but he wants to be shown off at the court. What is this? They can see your face as a judge, but not your
You gotta
face.
understand state statute. You have to let people go in. It's not because I don't want to. If it was up to me, they wouldn't see me up.
Oh, okay.
That's state statute.
It would be no difference than if we were in a regular board meeting, because normally they are streamed live video. So come on, Judge, let us see your pretty face.
Well, I'll think about it. Okay, moving on. 1.3. 1.9.3.
1.9.3, update and discussion regarding preparations for the 87th legislative session.
Chair Haggerty, members of the board, this is my last presentation for this evening, and this one is the shortest presentation as well. We are the Texas Association of Community Colleges in cooperation with the Community College Association of Texas Trustees, as well as the Texas Teachers Association, have moved forward and have all jointly accepted our legislative ask, if you will. I wanted to provide the board with an update on where that is. Initially, I'll share with the board, we were looking at about a 14% increase coming out of last session, which was very much a public school session, which everyone knew it needed to be a public school session. We were told, and we had prepared, we were told by leaders, chairmen of different committees in both chambers, that this was going to be a higher ed session. No one obviously thought that we would have a pandemic in the year prior to the session. Things have changed based on that. 58% of the state budget is on sales taxes. And then another significant piece of the budget is oil and gas. Both of those have been dramatically impacted by the pandemic. And as a result, we had to adjust. In addition, we received directions from the legislative budget board that we could ask for up to the same level that we had received last session. And as a result, what you see is that we're reducing our overall ask for the 50 community colleges for fiscal years 2022 and 2023 to the current biennium funding levels, which is a total of $1.8332 billion. Again, that is allocated amongst the 50 community colleges. We recommend that a priority be given to the student success point rate. Back in 2013, the 50 colleges agreed to performance-based funding. Within performance-based funding, there is 10% of funding. Well, we start with core operations actually, and at that time it was $1 million per college, or $500,000 per year of the biennium. So every college, the 50 colleges, receive $1 million up front. That's very different from Ranger College, which is the smallest college, versus Dallas Community College, which is the largest. In addition, we then looked at student success points or performance-based funding based on a series of metrics that we worked with the coordinating board to develop. Those began at $185 per point back in 2013. And then finally, the remaining approximately 90% of funding would go to contact hour reimbursement or attendance, if you will, similar to ADA funding for school districts, average daily attendance. We then advocated for an increase to student success points. In our Article 3 negotiations, Chairman Ashby saw that it would be more beneficial to increase core funding. And so Chairman Ashby in Article 3 negotiations took the student success money in the 2017 session and placed that into core operations. So core operations increased from $1 million per college to $1.36 million. So core operations is now $68 million. In addition to recommending the $215 per point, which is what we advocated for during the 19 session, the legislature actually allocated resources that equal to about $202 per success point. We believe that success and the increase in student success is important. So the 50 colleges are recommending that we go up to $215 per point, and that we have each college at $2 million per college, or $1 million per year of the biennium. Initially, as we were told, and we were much more optimistic, this is previous to March, on what the session could bring. We had initially indicated that we should look at $3 million per college, or $1.5 million. We have redirected. The LAR instructions told us we could only ask for the same amount. And so what you see in the table is core operations would go from $68 million to $100 million. That's an increase of $32 million. Student success points would go from 228.3 million up to 282.8 million. That's an increase of 54.5 million. And then the contact hour allocation, or what's left, would go down from 1.533 billion to 1.447. So the $86.5 million that are increased between the core operations and the success points would come out of contact hours.
What's the reason for it? Why are you wanting to take it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so what we were looking at is we looked at based on what was in the best interest of the 50 community colleges. And so again, what we're seeing, Judge, is based on enrollment trends and what we were seeing as we were developing our legislative request during the spring and into the summer terms, is there was a decline in enrollment. And so the core operations means a lot more to the small to mid-sized colleges, that increase, but the success points means more to the large colleges because it's very much correlated with enrollment. You have a bigger enrollment, you have more success points. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Serrata, I know that you and I can't remember who else attended the initial trainings when they discussed the success points, but I think we need to make sure that everybody in the college, including the board, understands what those indicators are.
Sure.
Because I think personally that EPCC has an advantage when it comes to the success points, but I think we can still go much higher than where we are with success points if we all understand exactly what that entails. So can you just very briefly go over them for the sake of our newer board members or staff that maybe are not as familiar with that success points?
Sure, absolutely, Doctor. When we were involved, and so the chair of the organization currently is Dr. Brenda Hellier, who serves as chancellor of San Jacinto Community College District. And so Brenda led the success point allocations or metric task force of how we develop these. I'll give you an overview, a quick overview of what we're looking at on success points. So you're looking at college readiness. So how many students become college ready? You're looking at the first, so how many students get through successfully the developmental sequence of coursework? And what we've seen over time is we have all colleges, our college in particular, is we see more and more of our students, kudos to the 12 school districts rather, 9 in El Paso and the other 3 in Hudspeth County, that we see a stronger and stronger student come to the college, and the university sees this as well. In addition, passing the first college level math course. So traditionally that is college algebra, but it could also be statistics or a liberal arts math course. The first college level reading or writing course. Those are all benchmarks that are in that. In addition, when a student completes 15 credit hours, those are points that go into the calculation. When they reach 30 credit hours, when they earn a degree or certificate, when they earn degrees or certificate in critical fields. So for example, the one that everyone understands is nursing is a critical field. So if we award an associate degree in nursing, that we will get extra points. And then finally, when a student transfers to a university. Now the transfer is only at 15 hours. So if they were to take 15 hours and then transfer to UTEP, we would still see a success point based on that. So that is how we calculate the success points. Dr. Graham, it is a rolling 3-year history. And so in the 2019 session, they looked at the previous 3 years of our success points, including through 19. So they included 2018-19, 2017-18, and 2016-17. So that changes every 3 years. So you're absolutely correct. When back in 2017, I will share with the board, and I shared back then, when the legislature chose to focus on core rather than success points, that cost the college $1 million because we have focused, and a kudos to, and without ever lowering the bar. The rigor continues to rise. The faculty understands that our students will rise to those expectations, but we, by and large, outperform most other institutions in the state of Texas on student success, on each of those metrics. And I give full credit to our faculty and staff who do a tremendous job of facilitating that. In those points, dual credit students also count. They count on the college readiness, they count on completing college level coursework, on transfers, et cetera. Even on our early college high school students will count on the degrees and certificates as well. We are now between dual credit and early college high school, Judge, we're at 30% of our enrollment is dual credit in early college high school, and they are up this fall. We, of course, opened 3 additional early college high schools. That is a part of why they're up. We're in the planning stage for an additional 7 that will open next fall. Yeah. Our district partners understand how powerful this is, and we continue to see those increase. And if we don't partner, someone else will. Yes.
But if those students are successful, then it adds to our student success points.
Yes, ma'am.
So we
it
do
does.
get indirectly some funding out of it.
We get the contact hour reimbursement for them as well when they're enrolled.
Plus the points.
Plus the points. Yes, ma'am. So that's why, Judge, the $86.5 million is coming out. Now, what happens is that means that the contact hour reimbursement rate, if all things stay equal, would actually go down. And what we're seeing is Inside Higher Ed just published an article nationally and what the enrollment trends were nationally. And what we saw is that community colleges are down 7.5% nationally. And that's preliminary. That was only 620 of, I think, 4,000 colleges and universities that were going to report. Unfortunately, the community college sector has been impacted more than the university sector. The universities are down, but a very small percent. They're down about 1%. Community colleges are down. Then the four-year privates, non-for-profit privates are the next sector that's down the most. You see that is the ask. There's a limited number of colleges that receive, there's only 4 colleges that receive funding for the Bachelor's of Applied Technology. That is Midland, Brazos Ports, Tyler, and South Texas. All other colleges community colleges that offer baccalaureates do not receive additional funding or line item funding. They receive the same as traditional community college students. So that totals the total of $1.33.2 billion. I will also share with the board that this allocation is dependent on receiving the same amount of money. If, and unfortunately, I wish I felt that I didn't have to say when, but more likely when community colleges are cut during the session, our ask will change. We will shift, and that may mean that core operations has to come down. Unfortunately, Dr. Graham, that student success points may need to come down because we still feel that it's incredibly important, but if we're cut, then we need the legislature to understand that this is contingent on receiving the same amount of funding we received last session. What are next steps for the college? Pam and I are already working on our presentation for our delegation. We will schedule those meetings virtually. We traditionally have hosted our delegation at 1309 for lunch with the full board and the board and the delegation, members of the delegation meet and enjoy lunch. I present what our priorities are to try to help them to inform our delegation of what our priorities are so that they can advocate on our behalf. We will schedule those. We will begin scheduling those later in the month of October. We will hold them with all of our delegations. So with Representative Blanco, soon to be Senator Blanco, with Representative Speaker Moody, Representative Gonzalez, Representative Dr. Gonzalez, Representative Fierro, Representative Ortega, as well as Representative Ordaz. So we will schedule those. We will break them up into groups of 2 and 3. We will work with the board. They will be online if your schedule allows. We will work with your schedules. Once we complete our presentations to the delegation, we will then reach out to other elected officials, county judge and the commissioner's court, the mayor and city council. And then we will actually continue these presentations, hosting them virtually to reach out to both chambers and anyone else that we can have advocate on our behalf. We had to wait until TAC got to where we are right now. With our full recommendations, everything was delayed this year, not solely because of the pandemic, but the instructions for the legislative appropriations requests came out about 2.5 months later than they normally do. We usually get those in April and May. We didn't receive those until late July this year. And then we had to get the legislative committee to agree. I will share with the board that it was not unanimous. We did have 2 members of the 50 colleges that did not agree with our proposal. And we understand that. We're meeting with them to try and mitigate those concerns. But it was, in a tough session, it was as close to unanimous as you received. Now, once we took it to the Trustees Association, and you all were represented by the legislative committee from the trustees, they unanimously accepted it, as did the Faculty Association unanimously accept the recommendations as you see them in front of you today.
The colleges that didn't agree, what were the issues that they had to contest?
No, it's a great question, Dr. Graham. And their concern was there are some colleges, I know of 2 colleges that have actually grown. I will share with you in our report our final, not final, but where we currently stand with fall enrollment. Remember that we budgeted for a 20% decline in fall enrollment and 95% collection of local taxes. We exceeded that 20%. We weren't down that far, but we are down. But there are some colleges, Odessa is up approximately, I think last I saw they were up 8%. We know that oil and gas has been impacted heavier than other areas, but they're up. But the neighboring county, Midland, same area, they're down significantly. Collin is up slightly. Those are the only two institutions that I know that are up. And Collin is in the fastest growing county in the United States, and they're up slightly. They anticipate seeing a larger increase. Our summer, by and large, most colleges were up during the summer. We were as well. We were up 8% on head count, and we were up 12% on contact hours. But we're down in the fall. I would anticipate that we'll be slightly down in the spring as well. Fall is very much a indicator of what spring will have. So that was where they were. They were concerned that since they're growing and we're taking resources out of contact hours, what I tried to explain, because I chair the legislative committee for TAC, was their calculation is that all things remain equal, and all things will not be equal. The sector will be down in contact hours, which means if you grow, then you'll receive additional funding. If your enrollment declines, then you will see less funding than you did last session. We will continue to reach out to those two members and any other member that has concerns to explain that this is an initial ask. If we don't receive this $1.833.2 billion for the 50 colleges, then our ask will shift. Any questions from any members of the board on where we are with the legislative agenda for the 50 community colleges and our strategy moving forward with our local delegation and other elected officials, as well as leaders in the greater El Paso area?
That's good information. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Go ahead.
You go ahead. You had any questions for Dr. Strong?
No, I was just going to say, I really appreciate the handout on the legislative update. This is really important stuff, and I think it's helpful as we kind of move along in our own circles when we're talking to the people that may have some sort of influence, or individuals that reach out to us individually as well. So I definitely find this information beneficial. Dr. Strata, and I don't know how the other members of the board feel, but if we can have a standing legislative update item, I would really appreciate it, so we can see where we are throughout the process. We meet monthly, but the session goes pretty quickly, and it seems like things move from one day to the next. So as much information as we can get on this process, because it will definitely have effects for years to come, the better. And so if we can do that, I'd really appreciate that. And thanks again for the information.
Ms. Sanchez, we will make sure that we put it on the agenda, and we'll provide a regular update to the board monthly. Any developments that occur between the board meetings that we need to get the information out, we'll send an update electronically to the board members, but absolutely, yes, ma'am. We'll also share, once we finish the presentation of what we're going to present, there are other policy items, small p, or actually large p, that we're looking at with the legislature that are not funding related. But this is the most important. This is our North Star, so to speak, with the legislature, is funding. And so we will ensure that we advocate fiercely for this funding. The session is going to be very different. As we indicated, and as the board considered a reopening in the modality that we're going to provide for instruction in the spring, I'd be remiss if we don't know how we're going to operate for the session. Now, we have, during our president's calls that we hold, we were holding them weekly. We have now reduced to bi-weekly. We have legislators join us on a regular basis. The most recent, Ms. Sanchez, you'll remember Chairman King, who was here for the redistricting committee. It feels like it was 40 years ago, and it was in January. Chairman King came in, and we had the opportunity, and you did as well, to testify in front of Chairman King. He was very transparent, and I want the truth, and I prefer transparency. He indicated that he was looking at, and they were letting him know that it was a $4 to $5 billion shortfall. He felt that it would be much more significant than that they would have to deal with. He also let us know that they were still working out how they will, whether it's going to be that they gavel in session and then not come back to the Capitol for 30 to 60 days because they cannot consider a bill for that period of time. How the public, traditionally, there's thousands of people in the Capitol at any given time during the session. I spend, during normal legislative sessions, I spend an inordinate amount of time in the Pink Building there in Austin with my colleagues from TAC. That right now, the governor has not opened the Capitol. Right now, the general public and the legislature themselves cannot go into the Capitol. Without the legislators can go in with special permission, but the general public cannot go into the Capitol. We don't know when the governor will lift that and the Capitol will be open. When we will be able to, it'll be very specific. They anticipate testimony, online testimony, a lot more written testimony. It'll be a very different session, and unfortunately, it's going to be a very difficult session. No, what, Judge?
El Paso.
I would imagine El Paso Days, the chamber will be looking at it electronically, virtually at best, to try and have different members and meetings with Lieutenant Governor and the governor, chair people of different committees. But you're right, there won't be, I don't anticipate that there'll be a traveling to Austin and El Paso Day. So it'll be important. We will share that presentation with all members of the board so that you and your circles of influence can share and advocate on behalf of the college as well.
Okay.
Dr. Serrata, would you get us one of those booklets that has all the information, contact information for all the Texas representatives and senators and all the legislators and the
Aides,
yeah.
chiefs of staff.
Right.
Yes, ma'am, of
Because
course.
I think that I have one and it's so old that the people that are on it are not.
They publish them, Dr. Graham. So what we'll be able to do is I will send you the links to do these electronically. Pam and I will send those. They publish them after the November elections.
Oh, okay.
And so they won't be published until after the November elections. But as soon as we receive them, because we do receive them, we will get them to the board. I use them as well. They end up in my briefcase, and traditionally on my flights, I'm looking at who I need to talk to as I go in. But absolutely, you're correct. We will get those in the interim. We'll provide them to you. The Texas Tribune has a really nice website that lets you navigate those. Yes, and we'll provide you the links.
And the other comment I was going to make is, you don't think it might be more effective if you, because all our legislators were used to coming in, like you say, for a dinner and a presentation. You don't think it'd be more effective if you invite 2 or 3 of them with 1 or 2 board members only, and then have the distance, just like you're doing a setting like this, and then because there's some people that, for example, Ms. Sanchez, and some people that have not experienced that I think would be very important for them to have that contact with the legislators.
Dr. Graham, I'm more than happy. We're more than happy to do that. Obviously adhering to face covering, social distancing. Very happy to do that. All I would ask, the one thing I won't do, I'd ask the board to do is determine which board members meet with which members of the delegation. Our goal was we traditionally break them up into groups of 2 or 3, and we have a total of 6 members in our delegation. So we could do that in as little as 2 meetings, as many as 3 meetings, if we're able to work with their schedules. If they're willing to come in, and we could use the auditorium, we could use the boardroom where we have a lot of space to do that. I'm more than happy to do that. And I do think it's a very important piece that you're right, Ms. Pina and Ms. Sanchez have not had the opportunity to meet with our delegation in the ways that we do. It's a great
suggestion. I think the chair and maybe the newer board members should be the ones that, I don't know how Ms. Robles feels, but I know that she and I have already been to several of those. And I think Mr. Oxter has also been, but I don't mind staying behind so that the others can experience that.
And what I'll do is once the presentation is ready, we will forward it to the board, and I'm happy to present to the board itself on it. But Dr. Graham, that is purely a board decision. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
that
spread
was-
around and have a lot of paper food. Beer, wine.
I thought those were pretty powerful, because we got a chance to talk with them more intimately in a setting that's very comfortable.
We can spread everyone out and make sure, and again, we will obviously adhere to everyone's comfort level. If you have a member of the delegation that doesn't feel comfortable meeting, we can do it virtually. Board members that have concerns, we certainly understand that as well, and we can do those virtually. But those that are willing, we can set that up.
It's highly important. They really need to know where you're coming from, because a lot of people, those reps have to get all that information before they go into the session.
And I think that they walked away well armed with data that you provided, and, that was, worked out very well, I think.
Dr. Graham, we're happy to do that. We will move forward with that and present that to the delegation as well as to the chair and the members of the board.
1.9.4.
Item 1.9.4, discussion and action to authorize Dr. William Serrata, college president, or his designee to execute a lease rider agreement between the college and the Education Service Center, Region 19, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families for the use of a Head Start facility. To approve.
I have a question on that, Dr. Serrata, and I second Ms. Robles' motion, but I just didn't understand, is this for the college facilities? And was there talk before that if we ever entered into a partnership or something with Head Start, that we would have to open it up to everybody or publicly? That's the only concern I had before.
Dr. Graham, to my knowledge, and I'm going to ask our team to chime in as well. This is at the Northwest campus. And so I'll ask legal counsel as well. This is the facility that already exists at the Northwest campus, Dr. Graham. So it is already in existence, but we had to update this agreement and legal counsel reviewed it. Then once legal counsel felt comfortable with it, then we were able to bring it to the board. But it was already existing. We just needed to update that.
Thank you. I thought it was, I don't know why in my mind I was thinking it was a new one or the one, the Y Center that we have in the North. So it's.
Dr. Graham, Francisco Ortega, legal counsel, to help answer, I think, the question here. Dr. Serrata is right, there's an existing lease. I think the lease was entered into in 2010. This lease rider, what it does, it merely serves as a ministerial function. The Department of Health and Human Services provided a grant to Region 19 of about $50 million for the purpose of operating and using a Head Start facility. The underlying lease allows Region 19 to use the Northwest campus, or at least a portion thereof, for the purpose of operating and using a Head Start facility. The lease rider, all it does, it serves only as a way to memorialize an agreement among the parties that because the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services provided $50 million or is in the process of providing those funds, they want to make sure that the parties understand that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has a federal interest in the lease, and it doesn't necessarily obligate the college to perform too many functions. Really, the only thing that the college would have to do under the lease rider agreement is provide notices to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. For example, in the event that Region 19 were to default under the lease, if we were to exercise any remedy because of a default, termination, or cancellation under the lease, if we were to mortgage the Northwest campus, or if there would be any type of lien or encumbrance on the college campus, we as the college would have an obligation to notify the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay, thank you, sir, for the clarification.
Any other questions? Call the question, Pam.
Mr. Uxer.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Ms. Naheda.
Aye.
Ms. Pena.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Item 1.10, board reports. Item 1.10.1, treasurer's report, none. Item 1.10.2, president's report. Item 1.10.2.1, Dr. William Zarata, college president, will update the Board of Trustees and audience on recent events that have transpired at the college to include an update on the COVID-19 pandemic and appropriate actions taken.
Chair Haggerty, members of the board, this is my last item on the agenda, so I'm sure that you've heard me.
You did say that before.
As I said, that was my last presentation. This is my last item. So, it's always a pleasure for me to update the board on some of the a snippet of some of the great things that the college is doing. Since our last board meeting, which was held in July, I participated in August, on the 25th of August. I participated in over 100 virtual meetings and calls since our last board meeting. This time it was 101 to be exact, Dr. Graham. I presided over the AACC Executive Committee meeting. I'm honored and privileged to represent the college in serving as the chair of the AACC board this year. Attended the Excellencia in Education board meeting. I served as the keynote for Grand Rapids Community College in Michigan at their convocation and opening day ceremonies. Participated in 3 Aspen Institute meetings, 4 statewide transfer meetings as appointed by the Texas Higher Education Commissioner, Commissioner Keller. This was a busy month for the Texas Association of Community Colleges. I had 14 meetings with the Texas Association of Community Colleges, including 3 with the Texas Talent Pathways meetings, 2 CEO, CFO meetings, 3 TAC officers call. I currently have the privilege of serving as vice chair of the Texas Association of Community Colleges, 1 executive committee meeting, 1 full board meeting, 2 legislative meetings, including the joint Texas Association of Community Colleges, the Community College Association of Texas Trustees, the Texas Community College Teachers Association meeting. Again, that was the one I indicated earlier, and that was unanimously approved, our legislative agenda, by each of those groups. 1 general TAC COVID-19 meeting, and then 1 Texas Association of Chief Academic Officers meeting where we presented what we're working on with the transfer work group. I presented that at the Clark State Community College, which is in Ohio, their town hall. Attended the El Paso branch of the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank Board of Directors meeting. Participated in a leadership inequity panel during our professional development day. Participated in a success through technology and education panel discussion with Dr. Espinosa from Socorro, as well as Mr. JJ Childress from representing Microsoft, and it was moderated by John Fitzpatrick from Educate Texas. I taped an EDUCAUSE session with Dr. Mark Millarn from Western Governors University and Dr. Karen Stout, the CEO for Achieving the Dream, as well as Lori Haycock, the Senior Vice President for Achieving the Dream. Hispanic Heritage Month kicked off on September 16th with a host of virtual events taking place through October 15th. Congratulations to our very own Dr. Carmen Olivas-Graham, the Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees, as well as to Dr. Carlos Amaya, our Dean of Architecture, Arts, Math, and Science, for both being recognized as 2020 Hispanic Heritage Month trailblazers or mentors. I want to thank Ms. Olivas and the entire Diversity Committee for all the work on that. On Thursday, September 17th, I offered our first ever virtual State of the College, where I reflected on the past year and celebrated the remarkable achievements that continue to make EPCC the best place to start and finish. According to data provided by Dr. Iron and her team, 1,218 employees participated in our first virtual State of the College address. Kudos to Ms. Pam Payne on finishing that presentation. It was a very brief 109 slides. So certainly appreciate that. Gave an update to the entire college community as well on COVID-19 and our reaction and everything that the college is doing, similar to what I just presented to the board. The Law Enforcement Academy is happy to report that the daytime peace officer class took their state licensing exam on the 31st of August, and all 18 students passed. This continues their 100% pass rate record for the program. This milestone is especially significant because of the extended break in the peace officer training due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Congratulations to Director Barry Vogel and the faculty for the great work, training, and support for our peace officer candidates who are essential to our community. In response to COVID-19, the Purchasing and Contract Management Department has worked with the Information Technology Department to implement a software solution to allow vendors to compete for college business without having to come on site. This effort will allow vendors to submit responses to El Paso Community College's requests for proposals and other solicitations electronically instead of having to present the required paperwork in person. In addition, newspaper and online advertisements will inform vendors of the change. And finally, I want to provide the board with an update of where we are with fall enrollment. Again, it continues to progress given the fact that we have the fall mini-mester, that second mini-mester that is going to begin later in the month of October. But I did want to provide the board with an update of where we are. So our current enrollment is just over 26,000 students. That is a 10% decline from last fall. We had reduced this to approximately 5 to 6%. And then we had our drops for non-payment, and unfortunately we saw a 10% decrease. That has gotten slightly better. We were at approximately 28,801 students last fall. Contact hours on census date had dropped 13%, but the mini-mester, we've seen that increase, so we're actually mirroring the head count. And so contact hours are currently down 10%. Across the state, again, we see we see very similar patterns. This is very concerning because I will share with the board that first-time in college students are the most dramatically, significantly down. So our recent high school graduates, the class of 2020, we are down 30% on first-time in college students. They are not enrolled at UTEP. I have checked with our colleagues at UTEP, and UTEP is also down in first-time in college students. UTEP is slightly down as well. I think they're down 1%. And we're seeing across the state that the vast majority of community colleges are down in enrollment. Again, I know of 2 that are seeing potential growth. Odessa is seeing growth. And then again, Collin is seeing slight growth right now. All other areas are down, and they're also down in first-time in college students. We're really worried about the first-time in college students because the data indicates to us that if a student doesn't matriculate immediately upon high school graduation, either the summer or fall after high school graduation, our region, the likelihood that they ever earn a credential is 1%. So this is another part of the calling campaign that Dr. Gonzalez and his team are leading to reach out to those first-time in college students that didn't enroll, to enroll in either the second mini-mester for fall or the spring term. We want to make sure we mitigate that.
Are they figuring out why they're not?
What we're seeing, Judge, across the state, not just in our community, is they just did not enroll. There was a lot of national news media on questioning the value of higher education, on why all these students that we were hearing were going to go away to college, but instead are going to stay home. Many of them did stay home, but they did not enroll in the local community college.
Well, keep in mind that a strong push is made towards the end of their senior year to make sure that they are in college. And this year we lost them. We lost them in March.
Yeah.
They never came back physically. So or you always have counselors pushing them, and this year that didn't happen.
It's gonna happen. We shut it down.
We transitioned virtually, and did we see the same results as we saw face-to-face? No. But we did see it virtually, and believe it or not, for the summer, we were up in first-time in college students. But they may have thought it was going to be a shorter period of time. When we all shut down in March, we thought it would be for a month, 2 months. We're now about to be in October, and we're still in a similar fashion. I do worry about the class of 2020. The state of Texas as a whole, enrollment participation from recent high school graduates continues to fall. Our region leads the state, but we have fallen to 54%. At one time, we were at 58%. And the state of Texas last fall was at 52%. This fall, I anticipate will be under 50% participating in higher education. There are bright spots, and I want to highlight those. The board's vision was adding this in our master plan, adding significant number of facilities, primarily focusing on STEM and our CTE coursework. Our technical enrollment is up. Our technical enrollment is up 5% at the college. Our certificates of completion, so think short-term credentials, are up 16%. So we do see that there are in the board's vision of creating the Transportation Training Center, the addition at Mission, what we're going to open up at the Rio Grande campus, as well as the Valle Verde STEAM building. Those will assist us. We're building what students are demanding and need. So I am happy to present some good information, but overall I am concerned. I'm happy that we were below the 20% that we budgeted on, but I'm not happy that we're still down 10%. And again, go ahead.
Robotics.
We are, Chair Haggerty. We already have some programs, and Mr. Smith and his deans are looking at expanding, not just robotics, but drone technology as well. And obviously the board's vision of seeing the growth on the Far East Side and moving forward with acquisitions that we need in that area to, in the future, replicate the building that we just is about to be finished at Mission. We understand that, Dr. Graham, you've shared as well, the significant growth that we're seeing in the Far East. And there's much to be done at all the campuses, but that's one where we're going to see.
Dr. Serrata, did we ever look at the possibility of inviting non-enrolled students to enroll with waiving the first semester or the first 3-hour tuition or something like that to just get them enrolled, and then from then on process all of it? Because the FAFSA, even if you get a lot of help, it's a monster to complete. But if we could get them enrolled and then help them access the funding, I want to look at that. It's not a free college because somebody's going to pay for it, but some way that we could entice them into enrolling at least for the first couple of courses, waiving that, and then the enrollment fees, and then transition them into it.
Yeah, it's a great point, Dr. Graham. And we did have some colleges that did that in the summer, in particular, that were seeing very significant enrollment declines. We looked at that beginning with the summer, and it would have taken board action. We were fortunate to see that we were able to recover and see a healthy summer, actually one of the largest summer enrollments that we've ever had. And then going into the fall, we were still under the concern that we could get cut mid-biennium by the state. And so we were worried about how we expended our resources, and that's why we didn't bring it to the board for the fall. I will share with you that we actually offered more financial aid this fall than we did last fall. We offered $23,408,000 of financial aid to our students. That was about $2,500 more than last fall. But almost $5 million was not accepted, which means they didn't enroll. These are those first time in college students. So they actually applied, they just didn't enroll. And they applied for the financial aid as well. And we offered them the aid. They just didn't enroll. And so
we have a way of finding out why.
We are following up with some qualitative research on these students to find out why and what they're doing. What we're finding out across our region as well as across the state is they're not doing anything. They're just staying home. And that's a real concern for us. So that's our hottest prospect because they already have aid in hand. So we're going to continue to try, and Dr. Gonzalez again in the Calling campaign are reaching out to these students first to try to get them. We're reaching out to current students that still have aid to add a course, and then we're reaching out to these students that had aid available but chose not to enroll. I'm real concerned about them, Dr. Graham, and given where we are, and again, did it all for the right reasons as far as safety and security, but the spring of 21 class is already on my mind, that we don't miss out on that class side.
Have you considered talking to the superintendent so that that doesn't happen again for this next class?
Absolutely, and again, I mentioned it during the panel discussion that I did with Dr. Espinosa. I mentioned it at the last El Paso Collaborative meeting that we have 5 superintendents attend. And then I mentioned it at the RAC meeting, the Regional Academic Council meeting. I forgot what the acronym meant, which all superintendents attend. And actually we have a meeting this week that I will mention it to them. I have a meeting with the RAC on Thursday where I will mention it once again. They share the concern, the superintendents do, but we're going to work together to try and mitigate it. Again, UTEP did not see an increase in first-time in college students. So this is a regional problem, not just our problem.
Does she attend the REC meeting?
Dr. Wilson does not. Dr. Tanabe, the Dean of the College of Education, attends.
Okay, 3.1.
Actually,
Thank you.
we have item 1.11 consent docket. That includes item 3.2.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call the question.
Mr. Uxer.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Ms. Nahara.
Aye.
Ms. Pena.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Item 2.0, administration, none. Item 3.0, personnel. Item 3.1, discussion and action to approve full-time staff and faculty recruited in positions funded by the institutional budget.
Any discussion? Call the question.
Mr. Uxer.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Ms. Nahara.
Aye.
Ms. Pena. Ms. Pena. Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Item 3.3, information items, resignations and retirements, no action is required. Item 4.1, financial services section. Item 4.1, discussion and action to amend the approval of the contract award to USI Southwest Incorporated regarding the optional extended reporting period endorsement.
Move to approve, and I have a question.
Any questions?
Dr. Serrata, this, the way I understand it is that we are going to be paying a little bit less, but is it worth the risk?
We went back and forth on this several times, and Ms. Shaughnessy is on the line, as is Mr. Gallardo, and I will ask them to weigh in as well. And we actually, legal counsel provided us guidance as well. We believe that this is the best option for the college, Dr. Graham. Is it 100%? No, but we think that this was the best option for the institution based on all of the information that we had. And I'll ask Ms. Shaughnessy and or Mr. Gallardo or legal counsel to weigh in.
Thank you, Dr. Saratai. And yes, Dr. Graham, let me address this. It is a dilemma for us to address because it is not, foolproof, as we know, with any kind of insurance that provides some comfort. However, we felt like the cost outweighed the benefits. We are currently conducting a very thorough review of any potential claims that need to be reported to Stratford Insurance. And we still have until about the end of October to do so. And so we have contacted all of our, obviously our vice president, their respective supervisors to make sure that we don't have anything out there that is pending. And we are compiling a list of potential claims that certainly could affect us going forward. So as long as we produce that information to Stratford, then we are protected should there be a claim be filed later on.
Thank you. I guess I'm just concerned with not knowing exactly what the previous legal team has still hanging out there. I don't want something to come back from that area. All of a sudden, we're caught without knowledge that we had that outstanding and that it's a high amount. But I'm comfortable if you've already looked at it and studied it moving forward.
Well, Dr. Pena and Ms. Field are currently, like I said, compiling a list, and we will be submitting that information to Stratford Insurance, and we are waiting until we, like in the next couple of weeks, to see if there is anything else that we need to be aware of. And then at that point, we'll feel like $148,000 additional is quite a bit of money for us to do such a risk.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Graham.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Chair, this is John Uxer. Ms. Shaughnessy, if I understand correctly, the extension that we originally approved was, we thought would be about $44.5 thousand. Now they're coming back and saying it's 148, so it's that additional $104,000. We think that there was a risk we're willing to pay $44,000, but the additional 104 was just way, the possible risk just doesn't warrant an additional $104,000. Is that the way I read it?
This is how we feel like at $44,000, it certainly was quite reasonable to actually extend the coverage. However, with that cost being tripled, we feel like it is quite hefty. Again, we're doing our due diligence and hopefully that is not something that we have to worry about in the future. Again, nothing is foolproof, and so again, this is something that we are recommending.
How did we originally come up with the idea that it was 30%? I mean, was that represented to us and they said, no, where did that come from?
There was an error in the computation, and I would like maybe to have Mr. Brundage, who's on the line, to maybe explain that to you so you understand why there was an error. Mr. Brundage, are you there?
Well, that's okay. If it was an error in computation, then we wind up with, then an error.
It was an error, sir.
Yeah, okay.
I'm wondering if maybe...
A general question, who writes the grant? No, we'll get into that later.
I'm sorry, sir?
No more questions.
All right, anybody else have any more questions? Fun question.
Sir.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Ms. Nájera.
Aye.
Ms. Pena.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Item section 5.0 physical facilities, there are none. Section 6.0 curriculum and instruction. Item 6.1 discussion and action on the sole source procurement of drug screening, background check, and compliance logging services from American Data Bank LLC.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? Call question.
Mr. Uxer.
In the explanation, second paragraph, last sentence is total payments by El Paso Community College for these services for faculty and staff are expected to be under $5,000. Yet in the header or anywhere else in there, does it identify that there's going to be any cost to it? How come we don't identify a potential cost to us? I can see where the students will pick up some of the staff, but there's a potential cost to the college. And I don't see that as any information. I have to read way down the explanation and say, oh, maybe we'll spend $5,000.
Mr. Officer, this is Ruben.
I'm sorry, Mr. Officer, what exactly is your question?
Why don't we see in the presentation or in the exhibit that there's some identification in the header on the sheet of paper that identifies that there's a potential cost of $5,000 to the college? You have to read the explanation and actually get down into the last line of the second paragraph in the explanation to see, oh, there might be a cost of $5,000 to college. Why isn't that stated in the presentation?
Mr. Uxer, this is Steve Smith. That's a great point. There's no way to know fully how much the institution will spend, but we can certainly add next time not to exceed a certain amount for the institution. The challenge is factoring in the number of students and how much each of those will cost as well.
Yeah, well, I think the students are going to reimburse it. It's a net, but it's just to the college. And it seems to me that, you know, I like the idea of saying no more than to the college or for staff or something, rather than just having a verbiage header, no dollars mentioned.
Yeah, we can certainly do that next time, Mr. Uxer.
Any other questions? Follow-up question?
Mr. Uxer.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Ms. Nahara.
Aye.
Ms. Pena. Ms. Pena. Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Item 6.2, discussion and action on the approval of a grant award from the U.S. Department of Education TRIO in the amount of $707,647.
Motion to approve 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, and 6.6. They are all grants, and it's a wonderful source of income, and they all are going to do great things.
Second.
Question?
Okay, your question, go ahead.
John, again, in all of these, I noticed that in identifying identifying the individual expenses, I see this title fringe, you know, and in one of this fringe is $140,000 and another one is $50,000. I don't, you know, what is fringe? I have several questions, but what is fringe in the first place?
Fringe benefits, Ms. Shaughnessy?
Yeah, I can certainly chime in and then turn it over to Ms. Shaughnessy. There's a number of reasons why you might see varying amounts in there. Depending on the grantor, there may be different requirements for what is allowed, but certainly fringe is the benefits and other ancillaries associated with employing staff. And so I'll ask Mrs. Shaughnessy to go a little bit deeper on that.
Well, actually, Mr. Smith, you explained that very well. We're talking about any kind of benefits, such as your any kind of retirement benefits, any kind of health benefits that are associated with those salaries. And so they are based on a percentage of those salaries.
Okay.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, in this case, professional support is $185,000, and then we have $140,000 in fringes. That seems like a pretty big bonus or pretty big salary contingency. You know, so I mean, it seems to me that when you run over six figures, 1.6 figures, that it might ought to be broken out a little bit more. I mean, what it leads to is a big blanket slush fund concept that first thing comes up.
Well, Mr. Officer, and certainly VPC can jump in, but this is actually the budget that is submitted to the grant, and that justifies how the money is going to be spent. So there's really not a lot of opportunity for any kind of these slush funds or anything of the sort, because anything that is grant funded has to be justified.
Okay. I
The only
guess
thing
maybe
that-
we object to the term slush fund, but it turns out that $140,000 on $185,000 professional support, and that is just a pretty big fringe. So I think we probably, I know that we write the grants, and if they want to approve it with just a giant number like that, that's fine. But I think we have it just for a process. We should be a little bit more diligent in describing what those fringe benefits, maybe as an addendum or as a note or something like that. And as long as we're doing that on the second question, I see that there, on all of these questions, grants, I see that we're going to buy additional furniture and equipment. It's strange that we have all these grants coming in and we don't have any furniture. Everything is going to be new. Where are we going to put all this new furniture for all these grants? I don't know, maybe that's just a rhetorical question, but it seems to me that the grant process has become somewhat generous and loaded and probably not quite as detailed as it could be. For us, it's great, but if somebody wants to come in and audit us, I think that these are questions that will come up. I just offer that as items to be considered in the future.
Mr. Uxer, if I can maybe alleviate some of your concern, one of the things that will affect the fringe number greatly is the mix of full-time versus part-time employee that we're hiring. Full-time employees obviously have a larger fringe associated with them through the benefits, as Ms. Shaughnessy was talking about. As an example, the TRIO grant that you're looking at, that's the first one. We've had that grant for over 25 years. And I can't speak directly to the $2,400 worth of furniture that we're buying. That's not a lot of money in the big context of things, but I would imagine that over the 25 years, we've probably got some shop worn stuff that we're replacing versus buying new that we have to find new locations for. So hopefully that will help a little bit.
I hope you might see my concern, at least an outside audit, when somebody wants to come in. I mean, if we got to buy for 25, and we can say $140,000 fringes, but having looked at budgets, the first thing I do is I say, if you have that as fringe benefits and you have breaking between full-time and part-time, I'd like to see just a note, X% salaries for full-time, X% part-time, furniture replaced. In other words, some justification for those kinds of dollars. If I were auditing it for the people granting the money, I think we're doing it. I think we got a deal. But if I were auditing it for the outside company, we'd have a discussion.
Aren't all those figures already described in the grant that got approved? Because we get just the grant was approved, but the details are in the grant itself. I mean, as a board member, you certainly have the right to take a look at the grant, but I certainly don't want to sit there and read the whole grant.
And Dr. Graham and Mr. Uxer, you're both correct. So we can provide additional detail. The TRIO programs, Mr. Uxer, the federal grants, we're audited regularly on all of our federal grants and through the TRIO programs. So that one is one that we absolutely have to indicate where every penny is spent within the allowable expenses. But you're right, we can provide additional description on that. I don't remember with the SSP, but with Gear Up and Talent Search, which are two other TRIO grants, there's direct resources that go to students, and that would be classified under fringe as well. But I don't remember, it's been a long time since I oversaw the grants directly. If the SSP grant is one that provides those, but we can certainly provide additional description of how that will be expended, Mr. Uxer, because I certainly appreciate the concern on being audited.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think as Dr. Graham indicates that there is a line item discussion and a line item presentation for each item, and it's available in grant, then I think at least a note on there saying detailed allocations are available in grant thus and so. So I don't know, I just, you know. No.
Mr. Axel, if I may just add a little bit of perspective on the TRIO grant. When you add up all your salaries, your professional support, your classified full-time, your tutor, when you add up all this together, it's about $528,000. And you consider the fringe as a percentage, it's about 26%. And we normally calculate for full-time fringes close to 30%. So it is not unusual at all to see that kind of high fringe as compared to salaries. I just wanted to add that perspective.
I appreciate that, and that's good information. It's just that I'll still come back and say, oh, okay, I'd like to see that. I just want a note to identify the generation of those facilities, at least see attachments, see a vendor, or available on request.
Sure. Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions?
I need to read the other item.
Go ahead and read it.
Item 6.3, discussion and action on the acceptance of a Skills Development Fund, SDF, grant award from the Texas Workforce Commission to provide customized training to Dish Network LLC employees in the amount of $358,083. Item 6.4, discussion and action on the acceptance of a 5-year sub-grant from the University of Texas at El Paso under the National Institute of Health, NIH, Bridges to the Baccalaureate Program in the amount of $310,157. Item 6.5, discussion and action on the acceptance of a grant from the Texas Workforce Commission in the amount of $287,848. And item 6.6, discussion and action on the acceptance of a grant award from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture in the amount of $185,474.
Chair Haggerty, if you don't mind, before the board votes, I'd like to provide Vice President Smith an opportunity to highlight some of the individuals that are accounting for close to $2 million of grants. So Mr. Smith, Vice President Smith, if you can please recognize some of the great team that has worked on this, please.
Dr. Serrata, thank you. That's very generous of you to give me a little bit of time. Certainly, Dr. Mitchell and her team, Lucia Rodriguez, on the TRIO grant. These are not things that are easy to do. It takes a lot of prep, a lot of lead time. Cynthia is doing a great job on that particular grant and has for many, many years. So congratulations to them. For the DISH grant and the SDF grant, certainly a shout out to Dr. Jaime Farias and his team, Dr. Carmen Aguilar-Gerner, and in all cases, of course, the grants team led by Bob Elliott under the direction of Miss Carrie Moe. So appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share that. We also have a culinary grant, which is really, really exciting. Certainly Dean Webb, Chef Nickerson, and the grant team deserves credit for the work that they're putting in there as well. Thank you so much. And also, I believe Dr. Carlos Amaya for the Bridges to the Baccalaureate program. That's the longest running grant I think we've got at the institution. So thank you to him and his team for leading that effort.
And let me add my thanks to you. Most of these grants are under your direction and in your division, as well as Ms. Moe and her great team, Mr. Elliott. No one who's counting, but these grants account for $1,849,209.
Didn't we have another Dovea grant or another grant that was for robotics or something?
We may have last month.
On behalf of the board, Mr. Smith, make sure that the board understands the good work that they're doing. And if they could double it next year, we'd really appreciate it.
We'll do our best.
Not too high of an expectation, just double it.
Okay, 7.1.
No, we have the vote.
Have to vote.
Oh, that's correct.
Mr. Uxer,
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez,
Aye.
Mrs. Robles,
Aye.
Dr. Graham,
Aye.
Ms. Nájera,
Aye.
Ms. Pina. Ms. Pina. Mr. Haggerty.
Aye. Motion passes. So moved.
Section 7.0, Student Services, item 7.1, discussion and action on the approval of continuing education tuition rates for new courses.
Move to approve 7.1 and 7.2. Second.
Read 7.2.
Item 7.2, discussion and action on the approval of continuing education tuition rates for revised courses.
Any questions? Call the question?
Mr. Uxer,
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez,
Aye.
Mrs. Robles,
Aye.
Dr. Graham,
Aye.
Ms. Nájera,
Aye.
Ms. Pina,
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye. Now we're going to go into executive session to bring people.
Mr. Haggerty, I have a question, sir. Do you think we could have a little bit of information on the Department of Labor grant that we have for robotics? Because I know Judge Haggerty and I have an interest in robotics.
So I'll call on Vice President Smith to provide an update, Dr. Graham, on that.
At the next board?
At the next board meeting, absolutely. No, so we'll bring you an update. And thank you. I remembered my state of the college, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. That TRIO grant that you just approved, as Vice President Smith indicated, Lucia Rodriguez and Cynthia Velasco, it totals, you approve 1 year. It's a 5-year grant. That grant totals $3,538,235. It is the largest SSP award in Texas out of all institutions in Texas, and it is the 8th largest in the nation.
Wow. And it's going to double in the next 5 years.
So kudos to all the staff. I mean, they did a great job with that. But we will be more descriptive in what we do with that, with those resources.
Okay, awesome. Once Pam gets done reading the executive board, we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Everybody take a break.
The Board of Trustees may conduct an executive or closed session pursuant to Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code for one or more of the following reasons: consultation with its attorney to seek or receive legal advice, or consultation regarding pending or contemplated litigation, or for any purpose authorized by law. Discussion about the value or transfer of real property, discussion about a prospective gift or donation, consideration of specific personnel matters, discussion about security personnel or devices, or discussion of certain economic development matters. The board may also announce that it will go into executive session on any item listed on this agenda if the subject matter is permitted for a closed session by provisions of Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. Any vote regarding these items shall be taken in open session. Discussion of charge filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission styled Carla Cardosa versus El Paso County Community College District, EEOC charge number 453-2020-01306, pursuant to section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code. The time is 7:42 p.m., 7:43 p.m., and the board is now in executive session.
Okay. All right, go ahead and call them.
Can any of the participating board members hear us?
Yes.
Okay, so
we're back in to regular session.
8:12 p.m.
It's 8:12, and do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, and our next board meeting will be on the 27th of October.
At 4 p.m.
4 p.m. and the meeting will be at 5. So all of you stay safe and we'll see you next month. Maybe. If I bring my moving machine.
Thank you all for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the board members. Please be safe, stay healthy.